What's going on, investors? It's AK from Fallible back once again to talk about Big Daddy Dalio's declaration that we are in a state of emergency and that there might be a revolution soon. So yeah, I'm trying to be upbeat in this video, but honestly this stuff is kind of depressing and they are really tough problems. But this is part 2 of the series. In part 1, we went over all the stats and data that Dalio put together that proves there is a serious problem with capitalism. And that's his thesis, right? That capitalism is not working like it used to in America and that we need to change it. So part 1, if you didn't see that video, I'll link to it above. You can go watch it real quick. So we laid it out. It was convincing. There is definitely a problem. Now in part 2 of Dalio's article, he's going to explain why it's not working well, why we saw all that data, and then he's going to explain how to fix it. So let's jump into it. So first thing Dalio says is that these bad outcomes that we're getting are not because of evil rich people doing bad things to poor people, which is what the libs say, and it's not because of lazy poor people and bureaucratic inefficiencies, which is what Tucker Carlson says. So it's not what either side says. It's just due to how the capitalist system is now working. Dalio says that he believes that anything taken to an extreme will become self-destructive and everything must evolve or die. That even applies to capitalism. So while the pursuit of profit is usually an effective motivator and resource allocator for creating productivity and for providing those who are productive with buying power, it is now producing a self-reinforcing feedback loop that widens the income-wealth opportunity gap to the point that capitalism and the American dream are in jeopardy. So normally, capitalism is a good resource allocator. Those that are doing the good stuff are getting the money, the ones that are being productive. But unfortunately now, with the state that we're in, instead of doing what it's supposed to do, it is continuing to widen the gap between the haves and the have-nots because of self-reinforcing feedback loops. Capitalism is now working in a way in which people and companies find it profitable to have policies and make technologies that lessen their people costs. Automation, right? It's getting rid of everyone. AI, all that stuff, which lessens a large percentage of the population's share of society's resources. Which, yeah, if people can't get jobs and they're being replaced by technology, how are they going to earn any money? So the companies and the people who are part of that are getting richer and they have greater buying power, but that's motivating them to shift their resources to produce what the haves want relative to what the have-nots want. So the people involved in the automating are the top percentage of people, right? And they're getting more money. They have all the buying power. So all the companies they're creating are catering to themselves, which, you know, I kind of like to make fun of the elitist bouginess of tech companies all the time. I'm guilty of it too. But if you haven't seen my Apple Card review, go watch that, especially after this video. That one's a lot more lighthearted and funny. It'll cheer you up. So they're not focused on fundamentally required things like good care and education for the have-not children, which we just saw exemplified in the college admissions cheating scandal, which I heard they're about to get jail time for that. Rough. But it's like a Martha Stewart jail, right? So it's kind of like a vacation. So as a result of this dynamic, the system is producing self-reinforcing spirals up for the haves and down for the have-nots, which is leading to harmful excess at the top and harmful deprivations at the bottom. Wealth gap. So the pursuit of profit and greater efficiencies has led to the invention of new technologies to replace people, which has made companies run more efficiently, rewarded those who invented these technologies, but hurt those who were replaced by them. And this will continue to accelerate over the next several years, and there's no plan to deal with it. And we know automation is coming. Tesla just released their latest self-driving software, the updated version, which now pretty much just drives your car completely. What's going to happen to truck drivers soon? And tons of people are employed in that transportation industry. What's going to happen to them? So the race to become more efficient has also led companies to replace American workers with cost-effective foreign workers, which obviously is good for the companies but bad for American workers. So these things together have caused the share of revenue going to profits being increased while the share that's actually going to the worker being decreased. You can see it right here, profits going up, but the actual employee compensation going down as a percentage of total revenue, which has been going up. More to the companies, less to the people. And here, point number 3, Dalio finally talks about the central banks. And I know in the last video I made about the populism revolution, we were talking about in the comments solutions. And one of you were saying that Dalio never puts any blame on the Fed and he doesn't even mention that. But now he talks about it. So the central bank's printing of money and buying of financial assets, which were necessary to deal with the 2008 debt crisis and to stimulate economic growth, drove up the prices of financial assets, which helped make people who own financial assets richer relative to those who didn't. And remember from the last video, most people don't own financial assets. Only the people in the upper class masses have the money left over to even buy anything in the stock market. A lot of people are living paycheck to paycheck and in debt. So when the Federal Reserve and most other central banks buy financial assets to put money into the economy in order to stimulate it, the sellers of those financial assets, who are rich enough to have them in the first place, first they get richer because the prices of those financial assets rise when there's so much demand for them. And that causes them, because they're getting richer from it, to buy financial assets more than they would buy goods and services because the return is so good, right? And that makes the rich richer and flush with money and credit, while the majority of people who are poor don't get money and credit because they're less creditworthy. Now, Dalio is talking about QE and low interest rates and stuff. And if you want to know more about how that works with the Federal Reserve and everything, I made a whole series about it. I'll link to it right here. It'll teach you what the Fed does, what it controls, how it stimulates the economy. But basically, the liquidity that the central banks have been providing to stimulate the economy, that's going all to the top because it's all affecting financial assets, which again, as I explained, only the top class of people have. So Dalio says that money is clogged at the top. And the issue is that all the top people have money to do what they want and invest in their good ideas and businesses, but people at the bottom don't. Because if you're not in financially good shape, nobody's gonna lend to you or invest in you, and the government doesn't help. Now, I personally would have liked a little more explanation here, because yeah, you're not gonna lend to someone who's not creditworthy because there's less chance of you getting a return on that lending. But it's kind of a chicken and an egg problem, because the people that are less creditworthy are probably so because of their environment and because of the spiral they've been stuck in. So maybe Dalio is suggesting that the government should step in and do that. I'm not sure, but if you know the answer to that, comment down below. Let me know. And again, all these points that we're going over, 1, 2, 3, 4, these are all explaining how these spirals have been created, why the wealth gap keeps widening. So the fourth reason is because policymakers pay too much attention to budgets relative to returns on investments. So for example, not spending money on educating our children might be good from a budget perspective, but it's really stupid from an investment perspective, because it's not even taking into consideration the all-in cost to have a society of poorly educated people. So we got the fiscal conservatives that just focus on the budget, right? They want to cut everything. But then we have the fiscal liberals too, who borrow too much money and fail to spend it wisely. So they don't get the economic returns to service their debts, which is why we end up with a debt crisis. So the idea is we should be getting into investments that have a good double bottom line return. And that means investments that produce good social returns and good economic returns. Easier said than done. But Dalio gives some examples later. So now Dalio goes over what he thinks should be done. So step number 1, we need strong leadership at the top. So he's saying there needs to be powerful forces from the top of the country that proclaim that this income wealth opportunity gap is a national emergency. They need to take it seriously and take responsibility for re-engineering the system so that it works better. Leaders taking responsibility in politics? I don't know about that, B-double-D. It's a tough one. Then step number 2 is you need bipartisan and skilled shapers of policies to work together to redesign the system so it works better. He says, I believe that we will do this in a bipartisan and skilled way, or we will hurt each other. So he wants a bipartisan commission to figure out how to better divide the pie and increase it. He wants them to figure out how to produce good double bottom line returns. Again, easier said than done. Number 3, he wants clear metrics that can be used to judge success and hold the people in charge accountable for achieving it. All right, politicians being held accountable and actual metrics on politicians to see what they're doing. How is that ever going to happen? And I'm not trying to be negative here. I just don't see it though. There's a reason why we have so many career politicians, because if these guys had to go out in the real world and build and run a business where there are metrics on your performance, because your business can fail and you'll be broke. Well, if they could do that, I guess they wouldn't be career politicians, right? But they can't. And for number 4, Dalio also wants redistribution of resources that'll improve both the well-beings and the productivities of the vast majority of people. So yeah, he straight up is calling for redistribution of wealth, but in a smart way. So he does have some suggestions because he's looking for good double bottom line results. First suggestion, create private-public partnerships, which includes governments, philanthropists, and companies that would jointly vet and invest in double bottom line projects. And those projects would be judged on the basis of their social and economic performance results relative to clear metrics. Okay, so he wants them to partner up so he could inject some business into the government. Real metrics. We'll see. B, he wants to raise money in ways that both improve conditions and improve the economy's productivity by taking into consideration the all-in cost for society. So, for example, he'd like to tax pollution more, and also the various causes of bad health. So I assume cigarettes, things that have a sizable economic cost for society, tax them high. Because then you're killing 2 birds with 1 stone, right? You're getting more money and you're helping prevent people from hurting themselves and others and the environment, which people will complain about their freedoms. But if you had to tax anything, I'd be down with cigarettes. I guess. But not Juuls though, because those aren't cigarettes. So C, he wants to raise more money from the top via taxes that would be engineered to not have disruptive effects on productivity, and that would be earmarked to help those in the middle and bottom, primarily in ways that also improve the economy's overall level of productivity, so that the spending on these programs is largely paid for by the cost savings and income improvements that they create. So he wants perfect taxes that aren't going to hurt the top people and that are eventually going to pay for themselves and the benefits they provide. Okay. All right. Number 5, he wants coordination of monetary and fiscal policies. Because money is clogged at the top and central banks don't have as much firepower to reverse the next economic downturn, fiscal policy will have to be more coordinated with monetary policy. So if it's done right, this should stimulate economic growth and reduce the effects that quantitative easing has on increasing the wealth gap. That makes sense. And I don't think that's completely out of the question, or at least not as hard to do as the other stuff. He basically wants to shift money and credit into the hands of people who are actually going to spend it, as opposed to the richer people who are just going to save it or invest it, because that's what creates the wealth gap, right? So in the next section, Dalio explains what really has caused, like what chain of events has caused this huge wealth gap, just in summary. So the high debt levels that led to the 2008 debt crisis and have since increased led to central banks printing a bunch of money and buying financial assets, which pushed prices up and pushed interest rates down. And that, as we talked about, benefited the haves and left central banks with less power to stimulate the economy now. These factors and the new technologies created very wide income, wealth, and opportunity and value gaps, which will continue to increase, and they're leading to increased populism on the left and populism on the right, which are causing greater domestic and international conflicts at the same time as China is coming to play as a world power with the United States. So there's going to be competitions with the new world power, which are going to be economic, ideological, and military related. The new world order is being set. Oh, scary. Because the last time we had this configuration of influences was in the late 1930s, when there was great conflicts and economic and political systems were overturned. So we explained this in part 1. This is the same mix of factors that created World War II. It's really not good. So his biggest worry is that this isn't going to work, because capitalism is either going to be abandoned just completely, if we become a socialist country with AOC and stuff, Bernie, Lizzie, or it won't be reformed because those on the right want to keep it as it is and the left will keep fighting against it. So the thing that Dalio is watching is whether the populists of the right or the left will gain control, and how they're going to interact with each other, and how those conflicts are going to, affect everything else. And he wants to see whether sensible and skilled people from all sides can work together to reform the system so it works well for the majority of people. I don't know. So he says the next 2 years there'll be a lot of defining elections in the US, UK, Italy, Spain, France, Germany, and the European Parliament. He's going to watch them closely, see how they turn out, keep us informed. I don't know. What do you guys think about this? Like, the stuff he's saying is true, but I don't know how you implement that. How do you get the two sides to get along when, as Dalio has proven, they continue to move farther and farther apart and get more and more extreme? They're less likely to communicate tomorrow than they are today. So I guess obviously his thought is that publishing things like this and really sounding the bell, that should help people wake up and realize. That's why he's on 60 Minutes. He's still making the rounds. But in my opinion, I don't know if straight up fact is going to move people. You need something a little more emotional. I mean, that's why populism works so well, right? You're completely appealing to their emotions, not their logic. So I don't know. Maybe Dalio funds a movie called World War III, where it encompasses all this stuff and scares the shit out of people. And it has Tom Cruise in it. Because if there's one man who can do the job in a movie like that, it's Tom Cruise. But really, I don't know. I mean, what do you guys think? You think this helps? Kind of does, but do you think it's going to be effective? Like, is anything going to change? Or are we set on this predetermined path and are we screwed? Comment down below in the comments. Now, Dalio also gave some good examples of double bottom line investing, which is helpful because, of course, if we knew what investments would provide social and economic good, if it was that easy, we'd do it, hopefully. Probably not, though, because everyone will just go for what gives them the most economic good. But anyway, him and his wife, through their foundations, they focus on education and microfinance. So he has examples from that, but there's also other double line investments like healthcare, reforming the criminal justice system, environmental protection, etc. So one from the education side is that early childhood education programs produce returns of about 10 to 15% annualized in the form of cost savings for the government. That's because they lead to better school performance, higher earnings, and lower odds of committing crimes. Early childhood education, so that's like Montessori. It ends up saving costs in the long run because because just you have more educated people, better people. And this was actually my idea. I remember being at the bar talking about it with this teacher, because I went to Montessori. I was like, what if they made Montessori free? Then you wouldn't need to make college free because people would figure it out. And I thought she was going to take that idea and change the world. Haven't seen it happen yet though. I have faith in her though. So microfinance, for every dollar donated or invested in this, over the next 10 years, approximately $12 is lent, paid back, and lent again. So there's a huge multiplier. You donate $1, it creates $12. Infrastructure spending plans, they can be really great. So smart infrastructure programs have a 10 to 20% rate of return in terms of increased economic activity, which means it's a great idea for the government to borrow money and invest in infrastructure because they'll get paid back and can pay off that debt. Public health and preventative health care, those also have positive ROIs. On average, these programs create $14 of benefit for every $1 of cost. So again, these are the types of investments he wants people focusing on. Good for the public, but also make good money too. But okay, all done with this long video. Comment down below if you got comments. What do you think? I want to hear. And if you like videos like this, we're always going to cover what Dalio is talking about because in my opinion, you know, he's the smartest. Like him so much, I had to get 2 of his books. But yeah, if you want to see those videos, make sure you subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell so that you get an email notification when those videos come out. And we also publish 7 days a week, all market and business related videos. I'm working hard to bring you the content you love, even when it's kind of depressing like this. But I got fun stuff too. So subscribe and I'll see you in the next video. Stay fallible out there. Bye.